All right. Good afternoon. So glad that you're here with us today. Today we will kick off our history we will do history probably for the next, probably way into the summertime. I want to hit on the history that nobody really thinks about or even knows, probably from about 1200 AD all the way to about the middle of America, when America, probably pre-Civil War America, how Christianity kind of changed from one spot to the next spot. That's my absolute goal. We are nowhere getting near that today. Today, and I have just one announcement for you today, but today we are going to try our best to get through everything before Christ. So everything before the birth of Jesus. If you've never been to a history, I'm going to go fast. You can ask me all the questions you want, but if I tell you that's a long answer and you're asking me in the middle of lesson, it's not because I'm trying to avoid it. I just need to answer it after I'm done. It's just too long of an answer. Sometimes people will ask me a question. I'm going, listen, great question. I'll tell you later. So if I say that, don't think I'm being rude. It's just you can't. There's sometimes I just can't. I got a lot to talk about with just a few time. If you look here in the middle of the room, we have a timeline that is out. This timeline is 19 feet long. The very top of the timeline is the entire part of the Bible. It is all of the Jewish people. You'll see the Jewish people from the beginning to the end. You will see that this is a young earth Bible. Young earth, it's basically exactly what's written in the Bible. So where we see Adam and Eve, and then they had kids, Cain and Abel, and then after Cain and Abel, you'll see how every one of those kids goes from here all the way to Jesus. It stops at Jesus, but this timeline goes from the beginning of creation all the way to now. What's funny about history, every time I teach history, and I ask you what's your favorite history, everyone says America. America is right here. It's about this much of this entire timeline. So it's only this big, but yet we treat it, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, because we should be grateful that we're American, but I would think that when it comes down to all of this, it's sad that we only know part of it, and maybe it's because of where we were, maybe it's because of who taught us history, and maybe sometimes it's just because it's been a long time. It's been a long time since we've been around history, long time we've read these things. Taylor and Austin will make fun of me a lot on the idea that sometimes I can't wait to gear every conversation into a history conversation, and I do. I love reading these books. These are my favorite books to read. Anything with church history. If I was to recommend just a few books to you, Church History by Bruce Shelley. I always recommend this one first and foremost. This will start at Jesus, after Jesus' death and resurrection. It'll go all the way through today. Okay, this one has multiple editions. You can buy the edition 3 or 4. It will still be a great edition, but the edition 5 is which one that one is. This is probably the most famous church history book. This is the Fox's Book of Martyrs. This is going to be explaining all the martyrs that died for Christ, all the way back to, the persecutions from the Roman emperors. We'll talk more about that next time. But the Fox's Book of Martyrs, I won't lie, not this book, so you don't get grossed out. It's already gone. That book's gone. But the first time I ever read this book, it was a toilet book. And I read about one man who died for Christ on a toilet every single day. And so it's just one of those really good books. It has really short chapters to it. This is another one that's really good. This is from Steve Lawson. These are the foundations of grace. This is one that's everything that's before Jesus. This one's everything that's after Jesus. These are really easy. People ask me all the time to recommend books for their husband or wife. These are the ones I would recommend because they're very easy, and this one will help you understand the Bible because it goes through everything that we're kind of going to go through today. This one is famous, probably one of the most famous ones, The Story of Christianity. That's better on audiobook than it is if you read it. This book is incredible, has amazing pictures in it. This is one of the brand new church history books. If you have kids, this is a good book for your kids, okay? If I was to recommend any book, it's this one. This one's written by Susan Bauer. Susan Bauer wrote, this is only one volume. I think there's 5 volumes to her books. This is the history of ancient world. So this is the same as this, okay? We read our kids this book. I think I've read it to them probably 3 or 4 times. And we always had nighttime stories. This book has nighttime stories of real history. It is biblically centered. And you can read 2 or 3 pages every single night to your kids. If you have like 10-year-old boys or grandkids that are boys, they would absolutely eat this up. It's about war, it's about fighting, it's about people dying. My kids adore it. They love for me to read this book. When we went on camping trips or if we went anywhere, this is the book we read. There's 5 of these, and there's all different ones are different, but this is the one that I would read my kids. It is written for kids by Susan Bauer, and so it's written in a very, very unique way, okay? If you just walked in, make sure you have notes. We have notes in the front and the back. We're going to get to use our screen today. Today we're going to try to hit everything before Christ. Next week we're going to try to hit most things after Christ, and we'll go through piece by piece. One announcement that I have, so today is the 15th, and we'll have another Wednesday night. Next week we'll do AD. The Wednesday night after that, we are going to change our plans. So let me explain. The first two Wednesday nights of May, we are going to have a Vacation Bible School instructions where we're going to learn about what Vacation Bible School is all about. We're going to see all the things that Leslie wants to teach us. The second Wednesday night in May, we are going to do VBS craft night. We'll go over into the gym, and we'll do whatever they tell us to do. Paint it, cut it, whatever they tell us to do. If you're a crafty person, that's going to be your favorite night. If you're not a crafty person, you can hold something, okay, while somebody else is crafty. And that's 99% of what you do. If you've never been a part of this, if you don't know anybody in the church, that's a great night to come to. You will get to know people on that night. Why? Because there'll be other husbands going, I don't know what to do. And so you'll have someone who's there who can point and show you what you need to do. And so the 29th, so 3 weeks from now, not tonight, not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday after that, the 29th, this is what we're going to do. We're going to play kickball as a church. If you are someone who wants to play kickball with kids, we are going to play kickball with our children's ministry and our youth ministry. We are going to play kickball. If you can bring your lawn chairs and sit out, that's what we're going to do. The other day, the kids played actually real baseball. I'm afraid to play real baseball with some of the little kids, and a lot of you are like, come on. But we can play kickball. Yeah, kickball is a lot less hit on your face. There was a manager that day that broke 8 bones in his face because he got hit by a foul ball. So pretty sure I'm on the right plane here. But that's what we're doing. So two Wednesday nights from now, we are going to, and I plan on trying to cook. I plan on trying to feed everybody pizza, have all that ready to go. Any questions? Everybody good on that? Okay. Hopefully no questions. If you do, ask someone, not me. Yeah. So if you have your thing here, let's look at this. Look at the backside. Look at the screen that's on here first. We're going to talk about this. If I was to ask you, I have everything but a Bible. If I was to ask you, how is your Bible organized? Now, some of you already know this because you know why? You've been a Christian for a long time. Most people, when they are maybe new to the faith or maybe new to church or maybe new to this, and I asked you, hey, here's an old book. This book's about, let's say at least 2,000 years old, but really it's probably more or less like 4,000 years old in its writings. Do you know how it's organized, and do we understand where it's coming from? So if you think about the way your book is organized and you look at this paper, what it's supposed to show you is really the order in which all of the Old Testament, so everything on the top is the order of the Old Testament, and then everything at the bottom is the order of the New Testament. In between, how we divide it up is Jesus' life, death, birth, his resurrection, everything in the middle. But what we have is each one of these events. We have the creation, again, Adam and Eve, the fall of man, the flood, the Tower of Babel, Abraham, when he was called by God, and then this would be our patriarchs, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. Joseph's misspelled. So it's the resurrection. Slavery in Egypt, Exodus, Joshua, Promised Land, Judges, King Saul, King David. Now, we ask ourselves, some of us know this. Some of us understand this. And what I would say with you, especially if you have a table of contents in your Bible, for you to understand where a lot of this happens. Now, Genesis, we are about to do, on Sunday mornings, we are going to do the first 11 chapters of Genesis. It's going to be about 12 weeks long. The first the first sermon, which is 2 weeks from now. Austin preaches this week, so that's going to be exciting. Austin's going to preach about the church. He's going to preach for Graduation Sunday this week. But in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about, in the beginning, there was God. He created the heavens and the earth, right? We're going to spend a whole Sunday just saying what kind of faith it requires to have and believe in that statement. Because once we left knowing God, of understanding the attributes and the characteristics of God, it's impossible to really understand Genesis without this. When he says that Methuselah lived for 900 years, again, if you can say to yourself, I believe that because it's in the Bible, or maybe I think that's completely ridiculous. And hey, listen, I totally understand that. But I want you to hear me say that I will teach and I believe what the Bible says. I can't not believe that. So when we look at the Old Testament and we see how this is all arranged, and you look at like your first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, that gets you all the way from creation all the way to where? All the way to the Exodus. It'll get us all the way to the end right here. Then once we get, see, this is what I'm afraid of. So once we get all the way to the Exodus, this gets us the first 5 books of the Bible all the way through here. Then you have Joshua. You have Joshua, Judges. Judges is right here. It is one of the worst times in the entire time of the Bible. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But I kind of want you, what I want you to be able to see is, in your table of contents, in your Bible, these things are really in order. They are in order all the way through, probably through the book of Chronicles. And you'll see that these are in order. But after that, you start having things that kind of go off. You'll have even Ezra and Nehemiah are pretty much in order. Even Esther is pretty much in order. But once you get to the book of Job and Psalm, Job does not belong in, it is not in chronological order at all. Job is most likely actually took place even before Noah's flood. So how in the world is it in the middle of my Bible? Well, there's reasons why, but we're not going to go into that. But I want you to hear me. What I hope for you to do, the purpose of today, is that you get kind of an idea of what happened before Jesus. That you have an idea of what was going on in the world, what kind of tools were made, how the world looked, and that's what the other page is supposed to be for. So if you have your Bible, if you have your notes, flip over to the side that has blue, and we'll go one piece at a time. I can't remember which side it's on. It's on that side. So you'll see, in the first, this is 4000 BC. So how many years ago is that? So 6,000, right? 6,000, 6,030, if you want to get crazy. 6,000 years old. Now, when we were in school, they taught us millions and billions and zillions of years. If you are an old earth person, I am not mad at you. If you want to believe in old earth, it's totally fine. But I would say that millions and zillions of years old requires a lot of faith. We have no clue. If I was to ask you what last week was, some of you would have a hard time explaining to me what happened last week. If I ask you what happened, where were you last year? If I were to ask you where you were 10 years ago or even 100 years ago, what was going on at this exact moment, and let's say in 1926, 1826, or 1726, you start losing concept. Do you realize why your days are shorter or even years are shorter? Because the older you get, the shorter years become, because your mind can wrap your head around a year. It becomes faster. When you're a little kid, it takes forever for a year to go by. Your birthday is, it's so long from now. Because you haven't lived many years. So the more years we live, the more likely we can be this. But I believe one of the number one thing that is found in our society is anytime they don't know an answer, they just stick a million zillion years behind it, and it creates this illusion. Because you can't really put your finger on anything. But if I was to say 6,000 years, your brain still can't comprehend that. It's almost impossible for you to even understand. Because even if I was to ask you, tell me about the tools that are in Gary's shop, tell me about the tools that doctors use, and then tell me where doctors were 1,000 years ago. Tell me where doctors were, mechanics were. Tell me about the people who had tools. What did a tool look like in the Iron Age? What did a tool look like in the Stone Age? And we start to really think this way. You start to go, man, it really, really, really is old. And it changes the way you think about the world compared to, now I say this because if we were in a museum, every one of us would go through the museum and we would start seeing all these different artifacts. Some of these artifacts will be made out of fine metals. Some of them will be made out of stone. And some of them would be made out of real metal. And some of that metal, the metal sometimes would decay so fast because it would decay faster than any of the others, because stone, first off, wouldn't decay, but the iron would decay because it wasn't oxidized. So it would actually rust and fall apart a whole lot faster. And then we start looking at things that actually are newer decay faster, things that are actually older decay slower. So it starts to change the way you actually see all kinds of things, especially if we were going to a museum. We could go to a museum right now. The thing that actually is the most deteriorated is one of the youngest things, not the oldest things. If you were to go into the earth and you go into sedimentary rock, we go into one layer of one layer of one layer. We say that the oldest layer is at the bottom. The problem is the earth growing? Why is there so many more sediments on top? We would say water, wind, erosion, and ice, and we would say that's what happened. But really, at the end of the day, you don't know what happened. You can't tell that story. Even if you look at dendrochronologically and you look through the idea of how trees and the rings of trees, you could see how water, you can see how maybe there was ice, maybe there was a fire. You can start to see history in multiple things in science. So I say this to you, to believe in millions and zillions of years takes more faith than to believe in the Bible. And I believe that. If you don't want to believe that, it's totally okay. You can totally disagree with me. That's a category like 3 to 4 thing. It's not the end of the world for me. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through this. So in creation, you'll see this. In creation, human history begins, and geographically, it is near the Euphrates and the Tigris River. We'll show this in just a minute where all these things are. So we're going to go through one piece at a time of every one of these things. The first thing we have is we have the creation, then we have Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark was when the world was evil and corrupt, that it was full of sin, and God told Noah to go make an ark. Look what it said on the right. Early civilizations developed in Mesopotamia. In this time period, there were civilizations. There were civilizations that were there, and they were corrupted by the Nephilim. The Nephilim are fallen angels that supposedly had sex with female humans, and they had babies. Now, we do have record of multiple different types of maybe even giants or even strange things. I cannot answer a question you have on that other than, sounds good. I don't really have any answer to that other than what I just told you. Why? Because I believe what the Bible said. I believe what the Bible said, and I believe that it actually must have happened because I believe God wouldn't have put it in there if it was not there. Because again, you can't believe in the Word of God if you can say, I'm not so sure about this part. There is something called textual criticism. Most people who, especially in history, who hate Jewish or who are anti-Semite, and I don't mean today's anti-Semite, I mean way back in the day anti-Semite, that they would basically take everything that was Jewish writing and basically destroy it and even make it silly, as if it was completely farce. Now, one thing I will say about Jewish people is they were incredibly good at records. There is no other civilization that probably was better at records than the Jewish people. So when they wrote things down, they wrote it down because it's what it was true. Now, I say this because Mesopotamia is in the perfect location. Mesopotamia is between the Tigris and the Euphrates River. It is near where maybe even the Adam and Eve were. We know that in that area is incredibly fertile. So the Mesopotamia is in that area. That civilization existed before Noah's Ark. That is where people were rebelling. That's where the sinful acts. And they say it's even more sinful than our world that we live in today. That is why God destroyed. But he then put him on the flood. Look what it says. The flood, it is global judgment, and everyone is destroyed except for Noah's family. We actually can. There's Stephen Meyer who will break down all the DNA. First off, you all have a mitochondria. That mitochondria of what Stephen Meyer wrote in his book, and I would really challenge you to read this book. It's great books about DNA. How we all strand from one of the sons of Noah. Every man, every woman, every person. And before that we all have a mitochondria, and it's all the same, and we get our mitochondria from our mother. That whole chapter it explains that every one of us has the same mother all the way back. So understanding this, I really challenge you. If you want to read a Stephen Meyer's book about that, it's really, really good. It's got good ideas about this. In Noah's Ark, when Noah set sail, we know that he set sail. He was in that ark for a long time. This is the ark that is in Kentucky. I believe it's drawn basically perfect. I got ISS one time when I was in school, and I had a Bible class. I told you I wasn't a good kid. And I had a Bible class, and that guy, and my professor or my teacher told me I had to go and draw the Noah's Ark, and I had to draw it exactly the way it was written in the Bible, and I had to like measure it out in the way he did. It was terrible. It's horrible. My drawing was terrible. It was nothing like this. But this is what is there. A lot of the stuff that we're going to use on Genesis study on Sunday mornings, we're going to use the answers in Genesis. That is done by Dr. Ken Ham. Dr. Ken Ham is the one who made he's the one who made the Ark Museum that's in Kentucky. Who's been there already? Some of you have been there. This is what this is the man who we're gonna actually take a lot of our Sunday morning things from. Ken Ham, I've heard him speak probably 4 or 5 times. I've got to actually be introduced to him once. And when I was able to meet him, he talked about that the first 11 books of the Bible can answer any question that we have with modern society. Think about it, male and female, transgenderism, God explains it. A husband, wife, not homosexuality, it explains it. That everybody has dignity, that woman and man are both worth something, but just different roles, all answered in the first 11 chapters of the book. Cain and Abel, jealousy, wrath. You see the messed up parts of the world. There's a lot of things that are written in this. We're going to discover this in our Sunday mornings, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you look at the here, they believe they found this thing. Now, do I know if this is real or not? Do I know if this is true? I don't, but I just think it's kind of cool. I think it's cool that they found a very, very large boat-like shape. There's actually 2 or 3 pieces that are down this hill. I've really gone really nerdy into this stuff. They now have this ability because they've actually looked underneath the pyramids. And if you want to ask me what's underneath the pyramids, I have no idea, okay? If y'all know what I'm talking about or not. But they have found that this is some kind of structure that was built. That this is some structure that has been built, that did land, and it landed right there on that mountain. It is right here. I got offered actually to go and see it. My wife said no, because it's too close to Iraq, and it's too close to Iran. And she shot me down. She said I can't go, and she's mean. But I totally understand, because it's really would be a very, very dangerous place to go to and to see. And so, so there's that. Go to the next one. The next one's the Tower of Babel. Tower of Babel picture that you see on the right is a very famous picture. This is a very famous picture of the Tower of Babel. In Iraq, this structure still exists. No one knows what it's for. They won't let us see it. They won't let us be around it. This picture, this is modern day in Iraq. This is where Babylon would have been. This is where the Babel would have been. Now, it could have been a piece of Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom. Could have been. We don't know. It could have been, and a lot of the times in ancient world, they would steal the foundations of other amazing structures, knock it down, and then they would turn around and they actually would use the bottom of the structure. So amazing buildings that were built in those times. You will go through the ancient world, especially when I went through Turkey and Greece, and they will steal, at that time, they will steal columns, like the beautiful, amazing Corinthian columns. They will steal those columns if they conquered this building, and they'll take them and put them on this building. And so then you get a building that's completely mismatched, where John, the church of Ephesus, is completely mismatched. Where John is buried, the Apostle John, it's completely weird, all these different weird stones. But what you see is, you see these stones, and you start to see, man, these things actually really do tell a story. Okay? It's really pretty. Really cool. Okay? Next thing, on your paper, I think you have Abraham. Abraham is God. God begins his covenants with people, that he says he will make a people and a nation as more than the stars. In Abraham, we start to see, you see those historical facts over there. It says Egypt civilization is definitely beginning. Now, could Egypt have existed before the flood? Yes. Do we know? No. Now, if you look and you talk to an Egyptian history buff, everything that we thought we knew, we don't know. Everything they thought they knew like 100 years ago, they have no idea. When they were digging up King Tut's tomb, it's like all new history has been written since then. We were all taught certain ways. That's what's wild is anytime I get to an Egyptian part of a museum, I'm just sitting there going, is this the old history or the new history? And so it's really kind of hard to get to your Egyptian history. Egyptian history is incredibly old. Egyptians were the powerhouse, as we'll see. It'll keep on saying this. Abraham, we see the picture of him and Isaac. We know where he does. He leaves his land in Ur. So I say this again. This is where the world, technically all of our history began. Now, I say this because there is a China line. So after the Tower of Babel, God confused all these people's languages and he had them spread upon the earth. Inside of this timeline, you'll see the Tower of Babel, that is the main center point. And then after that, you'll see all these different civilizations start to branch off. There is a branch of Southeast Asia. There is a branch of Asian, Indian, there's multiple different Polynesian groups, but we don't know as much information about them, okay? We know around the Shang dynasty, it starts around 1766 BC, okay? So we can't even really talk about that. So on your timeline, I don't have that, but it's not that I'm not trying to ignore them. I'm trying to stay in just this zone, okay? So in this zone is where we would believe that maybe even the Garden of Eden would have been. Now, do we know? No, you'll never know. Just like you'll never know the day that Jesus comes back. Same kind of thing. But this is incredibly fertile soil. When we think of the Middle East, we think that, again, it says Syrian desert. It is a desert. It's a desert all the way down to here, all the way down throughout here, all the way through Saudi Arabia. But near these rivers and near the coastline, this is incredibly fertile, incredibly nice soil. This is great land to be able to grow any kind of crop on. Bobby and I, when we drove by, I mean, there's crops, there's farms, there's all kinds of things that we would see. This is just a great place to be able to grow. This is where you see Babylon. You see the Tower of Babel would have been here. But then Abraham was called by God to go and leave this place, and he follows up. To be honest with you, he did a safe route. He was not really going out of his way of scary. Now, I will say this. Why is this scary overall? He's leaving his homeland. This is where all of his safety is. And he's leaving his father's land, and he's headed into this land that he does not know what's going to happen when he gets to that land. So, when he gets into this land, he actually comes down here to the Dead Sea. You actually come down to the Dead Sea, and that's where the site of Sodom and Gomorrah would have been at the south side of this. And he would have spent time all through here until he got guts enough to go back to Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem is where he would have made on Mount Moriah, on this sacrifice. Why this points to Jesus is because when he makes this sacrifice, this is on Mount Moriah. This is the same place where Christ's cross will be. And so this is all the same location. This location is always the same. This location is always going to be used all throughout the Bible, and it's absolutely fascinating. If Lee Norman was here today, we would hear some crazy stuff right now. Look at the 1800s. 1800s is the patriarch period. I don't think I have anything for the patriarch period. No, I don't have anything for patriarch. Patriotic period is going to, you see there, it says Jacob, Isaac, and Joseph. Jacob's my favorite person in all the Old Testament because he's the biggest doofus of them all. If Jacob can be God's person, then so can I. The rise of, you see there over the world history, it says the rise of the Egyptian power. They become the most powerful. There is no one in the ancient world that becomes more powerful than Egypt, and their kingdom starts to spread. Where does their kingdom spread to? We have no idea. We really don't know. We just know that the closer you get to Egypt, the stronger they become. They're not like a place where they went and conquered. They just took whatever they wanted. They had technology nobody else had. So in this time, and I want you to hear me, this is when we would have the Bronze Age is starting to really be in effect. We see a Bronze Age starting. We're leaving Stone Age. When we get out of Abraham, we're starting to get out of the Stone Age and into this. Now, I say Stone Age because you will see, I'm going to show you some tools. I'm going to show you some weapons in just a minute. There's some tools right here. In the Stone Age, people use stone. We all know this in our own American. We know that when the Indians, what did they use for their arrowheads? pieces of flint, pieces of stone. They would sharpen it and they would make these things. That is a Stone Age type of technology. So can you imagine when the people went from England all the way over into this and they found these indigenous people, and these indigenous people are still in this Stone Age? There's 2 ages ahead of them. They're not in the Bronze Age. They're not even in the Iron Age. They're at the end of the Iron Age where these English people are, and they're getting here and they're fighting people with Stone Age technology. Now, again, they had some things they could do that, because they had to use instincts, they had to use different crafts. And so it's really, really, really fascinating when you really start to think about the different types of this. That's why Cortez, even when he landed in Central America, why so many of those Mesoamericans died. He brought diseases that they never had before. They could fight them physically, but they couldn't fight them when it came down to any kind of cooties. Yeah, that's exactly right. They died because of that. Yeah, so look there. Look at 1745. We got Joseph. Joseph is in Egypt. Why this is important is because there's actually record of it. On this stone, it actually records the famine. It records the stocking up of all the different types of materials that Joseph told inside of the dream. And we see that Joseph is there before his brothers. And remember, he tells them to go and get Benjamin. He tells them to go get his father. He was able to trick them into thinking that they're thieves, and then he goes in front of them, right? This is incredible important part of all of the Old Testament because it shows forgiveness. Joseph is very much a Jesus-type figure, but if they don't come here, they were going to die in their homeland. There was going to be a major, major, major famine. This proves that it's actually happened, and it proved that it actually is true. The next one, we see there, we go into Egypt. Look what it says. It says, Egyptian New Kingdom. The backdrop is Israel is in bondage. Most of what the things that we see, the amazing things that we see in Egyptian, like the pyramids and a lot of the different statues, these were built off of slave labor. These were built off of the Israel's back. And other nations, they were not the only nation that was there. Egypt is the major world power. There is nobody stronger, nobody bigger, nobody better. In the 1500, look what it says. 1500, it's important that we know that the Phoenicians will come up with the alphabet. That'll be important because before this, it was chromoform and it was hieroglyphics. It was picture writing. And you will see chromoform is when you have if you draw a mountain. And I would say this, Hebrew language is very much chromoformic, where it actually is little bitty small pictures, but it's not much of a picture. But it is a chromoformic type of language that we write in that. Look there at 1491, the Exodus of Israel. This is where Moses, he helps deliver the people from Egypt. So you have the 10 plagues, and then you have Egypt remains still a world power even after this happens. We have Moses leading through the Red Sea. These are still artifacts that are now this is not what it looks like. This is actually showing you what this is, that there are things that are chariot parts that are underneath the sea. Again, this is what is believed to be. There is a part that is shallow. There is a part that is shallow that is in this region right here. You actually can see a little bit of inlands right here in this area. Now, this wouldn't exist now. None of this area would really exist very well right now because there is actually a canal that goes through this. And there is much bigger ships that go through this now. So some of this stuff right here is found on the sides, but not in the middle. This is shallower parts, probably not even there anymore because of just the canal that's built through here. This canal was very important to the world, if y'all did not know that, especially for the spice trade. But that's AD stuff. He comes out of here, he comes down. This is Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is down here at the bottom. Then what they do is they're wandering. They're wandering, again, they're trying to get back up here to where Jerusalem is. This is where the land of Canaan, this is where Joshua will go into, but I didn't have time, I didn't have space for that to actually happen on that. So what's important about this is that you see in Joshua's conquest, look there at 1400s. 1400 BC, Joshua has a conquest. So he has his people. Remember, all the people who doubted God, they weren't allowed to go into the promised lands. Even Moses was not allowed to go in the promised land. The people who were allowed to were going to be the generations after this, including Joshua. So Joshua led them in there. You got the story of Jericho, where they blow the horns, they walk around the thing, the walls come crumbling down, and we have this stuff. This stuff is real. We know these things happen. This is actually written even in Jericho. Jericho, even today, what's really neat, Jericho's a really cool place. I was just blown away when we were in Jericho. And if you remember what Jericho was a place where Jesus was, and Zacchaeus climbed the tree. What kind of tree did he climb? Sycamore tree. There are still sycamore trees in this nasty, nasty, nasty place of Jericho. It's not a nice place. Jericho and Bethlehem, two major prominent areas that we would know in Christianity, are both not ran by Jewish government. They were ran by the Palestine, and so they're going to be ruled by Palestine. That was a very country and very East Texan of me to say Palestine. But yeah, that's how that was. Oh, what did I do? I don't know how to get it back. Oh, well. Back up. There you go. All right. I'm going to touch it if I make it right. All right, look at the next one. It says, in Joshua's conquest, you see, did I even do Joshua's conquest? Yeah. No, this is it. Joshua's conquest, this is them walking around. Again, what I love the most, I love art museums, and I love to find, there is nothing but sections of nothing but religious paintings in art museums. There's more of those than anything else. If you go to Washington, D.C., if you go to the National Mall and you go to the National Museum of Art, 3/4 of it is all Christian-based. It's all this. This is all you get. So what happens is you start having, they come in, and I want you to hear me say this. This is important because what we're going to see when we talk about this in BC and AD is the power of tribes, okay? Tribes are very important. Either your country is ran by a kingdom, by a king, by one mega force, and they go and take over where they want, or it's ran by multiple tribes. What we have is when we have a crumbling down of a kingdom, we have a building up of tribes, and if that tribes either unite or they fall apart, and what happens in Israel's history is that once they got into the promised land, they started taking over all these different places, all of the 12 tribes of Israel started to separate. They are not united. They would argue with each other. This is what led to the book of Judges. Because they could not, and every one of these started to be influenced by the people who were around them. They started to be influenced by other gods and other idols. So it never really became where they still worshiped the king, the God that set them free from Egypt. They forgot him really quickly. And that's what happened in this whole thing. This is what leads to Judges and how Judges actually comes and messes. It really is the worst time. It's the lowest point in all of it. Look what it says in 1200. It says, Judges error. Israel cycles through apostasy, basically leaving the faith, following other idols, following anything else. Now, you'll see over there, it also says the Bronze Age, okay? Now, if you look there at the very one above it, it says the Bronze World, it is city-states to kingdoms. So all the cities, states, that's the tribes, they go to kingdoms. Then what happens when we get to the Judges era, we have the Bronze Age now switching to the Iron Age. Now we're switching from the kingdoms to the tribes again. Okay? In other words, the kingdoms had something bad happen. Even Egypt. This is when it started to kind of mess up and all fall apart. Then you go from there, and I want you to hear me. This is not going to last long. If these people don't unite, they do not get well. So after Judges, what was the saying? What did these people want? They wanted a king. If you remember, this is the day before there was no king, right? That's what it says in Judges at the very end of the Bible, at the end of the book. And then even when it gets into 1 and 2 Samuel, Samuel's sitting there the whole time going, guys, you don't need a king. You don't need a king. And they're going, no, we want one. And I want him to be strong. I want him to be looking good. I want him to be the most fit guy and the best guy there is. And that's where they get King Saul. King Saul is the first king of Israel. Israel is finally into a monarchy, and it is an absolute mess. Then Samuel anoints this kid, this shepherd boy named David. And we know the story how David is friends with Saul. He is friends with Jonathan. And that all turns bad as David does nothing but conquer land, conquer places, cleans up all of these things. As these are all united around Saul, they all start losing faith in Saul, but they all start gaining faith in this young boy, this young general who is David. So this is how 1 and 2 Samuel go. This is how 1 and 2 Kings, we're headed into this kind of world. So now if someone could just unite them all, and that's what David does. David unites the kingdom. Look what it says. David He united kingdom of the tribes. He united all the kingdoms. He united all the little tribes there. That the Philistines remain the main foe in this area. And so when we think about David, this is the, before we got into the next one, that's what I want to show you. This is what it shows. Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age. These are they're always guesstimations on the dates. Don't ever go crazy on the dates. This is what a Bronze Age weapons would have looked like. If we were to go into a museum today and we went into antiquity, like ancient world, they would show us weapons and they would show us jewelry and they would show us pottery. I hate pottery. I hate looking at pottery. I don't ever want to see a pottery again. But when it comes down to, this is the Bronze Age, this is the Stone Age. Imagine fighting these two wars. Okay? Now, this is a little bit high tech, way high tech. But what happens is over time, into the ADs, into the medieval period, into the Renaissance, into these things, we learned how to make swords really well. We start getting blacksmith. We start having anvils. We learn how hot and cold start changing things. We start how to be able to do this. We create this. So I put this on here because imagine these weapons versus this weapon, and that's what we were doing when we came to America. That's who we fought. We fought this kind of war. Oh, and we also had the beginning of guns, right? So you can just imagine, like, this is a totally not fair fight. You can see Stone Age, Stone Age, Stone Age. Then you start seeing a Bronze Age. Bronze Age will be more finer metals because you have to make bronze. You have to use copper and I think it's tin to be able to make bronze. And then you have iron. Iron is a requirement, and you either have 2 or 3 metals, but it takes melting and schmelting to do those things. But you don't have to need that stuff. But what's cool about this stuff is that it changes the way the world is. It changes the way things are. Why did we do well in the Philistines? Because we went to the Iron Age before they did. We were able to be more sophisticated. Now, in this time, especially all the way from the Judges all the way to David, the main area, especially when we were tribes, we fought tribes like the Hittites. We fought tribes, the Hittites were probably the strongest of them all. The Hittites, the Amorites, there's so many of the ites. And what David and Saul and Jonathan did, they conquered these men, and they did it first with bronze moving to the Iron Age, and you could see how that would decimate an army. Judah then, or Israel, what did that touch? What it did was, it became strong. This is the United Kingdom. Now, all of this is united. If someone was to ask me, what does Israel really look like? This is what Israel should really look like. This is the Phoenicians. They never touched them. They were friends with the Phoenicians. They were allies. This is the Philistines. Okay? So, I'm not trying to pick a fight, but that would be more of a Palestine. But again, not trying to pick a fight. So King David, you see that. Then it heads up. So this is the beginning. This is when they are the top. There's nothing better, nothing bigger in the region than Israel. Israel was it. Judah was it. It was the place. This is what Solomon built. Solomon built the temple of God. He was told to do it by God. He made this temple. This is where the Ark of the Covenant set. There's nothing greater. This actually shows less than what that shows. That actually shows an amazing giant temple compared to even what this shows. But there was nothing like Solomon's temple. There supposedly was no building like this. The Bible goes on and on and on how important this building was than any building that's ever been built ever. That this was what Solomon's temple was. But after Solomon died, his sons took over, and everything went bad. His sons took over. One of his sons wanted to have a chariot ride into town. His uncle didn't care about him, was tired of waiting on him. He knew that Solomon was going to die, so he went to Egypt just so that everybody would welcome him home like a hero. And his uncle said, nope, he's done. If he's not here, we're not going to mess with him. So there just started this internal war inside, and you can read about this in the Bible. What happens is we have a split. We have a split in the kingdom. You have Israel at the top. You have Judah at the bottom. This is in your Bible. Okay? Northern kingdom, this is where Elijah and Elisha hung out. They were there. They were put there to warn all the people in the northern kingdom, turn back to God, or God will destroy you. He would send someone to destroy them. Okay? Judah down here, most of the time did what was right for quite a while. I think I told you even last Sunday, King Uzziah. King Uzziah would have been the king of Judah, and they were doing what was right. But they slowly, their eyes start to turn off God and turn on to themselves, and they will be wiped off the face of the earth as well. So I don't think I have another thing between them in there. Yeah, look there, it says Homer wrote the Odyssey. But before that, it says Assyria begins its rise to power, and Rome was traditionally founded in 753. Rome is began by Romius and Remus. There is a myth, kind of like Beowulf for Rome, where Romius kills Remus, and they both were raised by wolves, and this crazy stuff. But that was the first beginning of Rome. Rome started off as a republic, was not led by an emperor. It started off as a republic where it was more like us, and it actually turned back to an emperor so it could be powerful and strong. And so that's a part of that. I keep on doing that. Next thing, the Assyrian Empire. Look what it says. The northern kingdom was destroyed. Israel falls to Assyria. Assyria is the dominant empire. Assyria, you see what Assyrians did, okay? Now notice this little circle around Judah, okay? There's Judah, there's Israel. This is all the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians, this is what chromoform looks like. It's like these little small indentions that are all through this, and it's written, it's an unbelievable, like Wes Huff can read this. It blows my mind that someone like that can read this. But he can read things like this and know what it says. It's just a bunch of craziness to me. This is what the gods would have looked like. They would have had wings, and they would have had bodies of lions, kind of like a sphinx, but this is what would have been all in this kind of system. This is what these gods would have looked like. This area here, where you see their main capital was Nineveh, but they came and they conquered all of this area that was fertile. This desert area, they cared nothing about the desert area. No one would, right? You wouldn't want that area. But they came and took over this. Now again, they don't take over Judah. They don't take over Israel. But the northern Israel is what this will fall. What Assyrians will destroy is they'll destroy Israel. Israel will fall to Assyria. And it says there, we know this date, it's 722. That's without a doubt, we know the date. Look there at 612. It is Nineveh that falls. So Nineveh that falls. And Assyria collapses under Babylon. Babylon, we know this is in the Bible. Babylon, who's this man? Nebuchadnezzar. Who's this man? Nebuchadnezzar. Okay. Nebuchadnezzar goes mad, crazy, goes insane. If you remember those stories in the Bible, he goes insane. He actually might be a believer in Jesus, a believer in God, by the way, because it's a beautiful story. This is what their writing would have looked like. It would have been a little bit more developed chromoform. Babylon was this way. They were cruel. They were absolutely cruel. Babylon was not like the gracious people who will come after this. The gracious Babylon was, we are going to conquer people, and we're going to wipe them off the face of the earth. They did not care. They would take their women. They would take their families. They would kill every man there was. They would destroy everything they could. When they did take over Assyria, they destroyed everything. There was very little left over. We have very little artifacts from Assyria just because Babylon destroyed everything. Here's why that matters. Because when Babylon came to Judah, because remember, Israel's gone, Judah is the one that's left over, they will come and destroy the temple. And all that was left of the temple is the Wailing Wall that we know of today, which is the foundation of Solomon's temple. That is why the Jews still today have their one little section of the Wailing Wall, and they get to go and pray. You know what's at the top of this Wailing Wall? The Islamic section, which they have no right to be there, by the way. They have no right religiously or culturally or geographically. There's no point for them to be in Jerusalem other than it's just a power play. And the Jews will go to the Wailing Wall, and there's a men's quarter and there's a women's quarter, and they are allowed to go there, pray, and and you've seen our presidents go and do this thing. They'll wear the yarmulke, they'll do all the things like that. And, but I say this because it's still there today. And this is what Babylon destroyed. Look what it says. It says, Jerusalem falls in 586. The temple is destroyed, and Judah is exiled. Judah is made to go and live in Babylon as slaves. This is where you're going to get the story of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You're going to get the stories. You're going to get the stories that a lot of the prophets, minor prophets, and prophets are going to be telling their story between this trip, this time. You're going to hear a lot of crying out while they're crying out for the other nations or crying out for the people who are being treated badly. This is that time period. So a lot of your end of your Old Testament, this is when it's happening. Then, if you look there, Babylon falls. Exile begins where they're able to go back, and Cyrus of Persia conquers Babylon. Cyrus conquers Babylon, but he's not the one who lets them go. The one that lets them go is Darius. Darius is the one that lets them go. He says you can go back. Now, the Persian Empire is completely different than Babylon. They said, behave, you can have your own God, you can have your own society, you can have your own life, but just don't mess with us. Don't cause a problem. If you cause a problem, we're going to come and deal with the problem. Persia was actually a very gracious, this is where we start to see how kingdoms start to change. Instead of going in places, and again, it never works out, and we see this later in AD, when kingdoms go in and try to make people be like them, that never works out. You have to let people have an identity, and if you give them identity, you can be able to rule over them and peacefully. What we see the Romans do to the Jews later is they start to try to steal their identity. And that's what causes the riot when Jesus is there. So if we think about the Babylon and we think about Cyrus, we know these stories. We know that they're going to return back. This is Cyrus here. This is the Persian Empire. It is absolutely enormous. It stretches all the way to the edges of India, all the way across, all the way through Turkey, into Greece, Macedonia. Now, this would have been the Greek Empire, okay? Now, this is important because what's going to start to happen is this is all going to start to grow itself. This is when the Greek mythology, Greek temples, all these things would have been starting and happening. And you can see, look there, it says, Persia allows to return and rebuild. And then it says Persia, I'm over on the right side of 490. It says Persia and Greeks collide in the Persian Wars. So this was come over here and fight in Greece. They come and fight in Greece, and they fight the Greeks. Now, the Greeks are divided, the Athenians and the Sparta. Spartans are the ones that are strong and also psychotic. But the Athenians are the ones that are very, very, very smart, know how to do engineering, incredibly knowledgeable, and very republic. But they will meet. We know the story of Thermopylae. That's the story of 300 if you saw the movie. A lot of things like that happen. You will see that clash you see there at the Thermopylae in 490. In 480. And then you'll see in 331. Okay, at the end of, and even in Daniel, there actually starts to be this multi-headed goat. And we start to see these things that start to, one of those goats might be Cyrus, and one of those goats might be this man. They believe that it could be Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great would then create an entire army from Macedonia, which is northern Greece. And Greek would actually come and they would become the powerhouse. Alexander the Great conquers almost all of the known world. And honestly, we would say just one man can't do that. I'll be honest with you, that one man can do that. That man was only 27, 25 years old when all that stuff happened. He was incredible. He was a student of Aristotle. He was one of the smartest, most engineering guys. This Battle of Tyre is actually a little bitty island that's off of that coast. He built a land bridge and then went and destroyed all the people who were there. It's an unbelievable battle history if you want to go and read about it. This is an unbelievable story. He then supposedly got just sick, just like the regular flu, died on the way to India, and nobody knows where he's buried. If you go to Istanbul today, they have his tomb. Nobody's in it, but they have his tomb. They believe that someone stole his body and came and buried it in Alexandria, but they don't really know. No one has a clue. That is where his library was. Yep. And so nobody really knows where he is buried, but he was probably the greatest conqueror in the entire. My kids love to hear Alexander the Great stories. Why this is important is what it says in 331. This is called the intertestamental times. The intertestamental times are the times of 400 years of silence between the last thing written in the Old Testament to the first thing written in the New Testament. This being the intertestamental, so it's in between the testaments, New Testament and Old Testament. And so in between, that's why it's this way. But what happens if you want to learn history? Just learn what happened in the world for those 400 years. You'll have so much to learn, you won't be able to keep it all in. It's almost like God was setting the table for Jesus to come into the world. So you see how the Greeks come to rise. You see how Alexander, who's a Macedonian, who then forces the Greeks to then follow and do what he wants. And then what after that, you start to see, he dies. You start to see the Hellenistic and the ideas of the Hellenistic. That's very important because that makes the whole entire area beautiful. Then you start to see Julius Caesar lead the Roman legion. He goes and he conquers all the way to England. England, like modern day England. And he comes down over the Rubicon Mountains, comes into Rome, and he takes control. He was never considered an emperor. He was considered Caesar, because that's what they named the emperor after him, that he would be the Caesar, and he would be Caesar. Now, we all know that Caesar dies. He gets stabbed at Tu Brute. We all know he gets stabbed by all of his friends. This is Caesar Augustus. It's not really his name. Caesar Augustus is not his name. But why this is important, Caesar Augustus is the emperor when Jesus is born, and this is the man who makes the census. This is the man who puts it all together so that Jesus runs off to Bethlehem. This is who he is. His real name is Octavian. Okay? His real name is Octavian. Octavian had a battle with Cassius in the foothills of Philippi. When you're standing in Philippi and you look at this amazing, beautiful green valley, that whole battle for the whole world technically happened right there at the foothills of Philippi. It's crazy when you're in Philippi and you're going, oh my gosh, this is where Paul was. And then you turn around and going, hold on. The whole world basically was fought for right here. And then after it was fought for, because if you remember, who did he fight? He had to fight Cassius, but he also had to fight Mark Antony, who was down in Cairo, or down in Egypt, with who? Cleopatra. And so I told you, it's a crazy amount of history that happens in these 400 years. And it's like it sets up. What happens in this time period is Rome becomes incredibly strong and incredibly ruthless. Incredibly ruthless. Now, they will allow you to have your own religion and have your own people, but they're going to have proctors. They're going to have people like Pontius Pilate who are going to watch over the people in Judea, and if they start to get out of line, he's going to call in his militia. Who was the one who was in charge of the Jews? You may remember Herod. He was the one who was in charge. He was supposed to be their king, right? Herod didn't trust the Roman government either. We know that because he created his own empire. He actually created his own fallback place near the Dead Sea and Masada. So he didn't trust the Roman Empire either. So really nobody trusted the Roman Empire because the Roman Empire is honestly the scariest thing that we've ever seen on this planet. They took over all of this area, and you see, look, all the way up to the Britannia. Right here, there's actually a wall, Trajan's Wall. You actually could see it if you were to go at the edge of Scotland, you actually can see there's actually a wall. That's a Roman wall. There's Roman ruins in London. There's Roman ruins on the edges of Britain. Like was a Roman area. We don't think that way. We only think that Rome's here. No, it covered this whole area. Roman roads still exist today. You can still see the wagon tracks when you walk on a Roman road. It is absolutely incredible to be able to see that. Caesar Augustus created the Pax Romana. After the fights with Mark Antony and Cassius, the Pax Romana is that we will have peace in the kingdom. And so he created this peaceful area. He said that we're going to have peace, but he had no idea what kind of baby was about to be born in his kingdom. Because that's what happens next, that Jesus is born. All of the Old Testament prophecies are fulfilled, and this is how it ends. We know this. Now, we think about it this way. Bobby and Laura will probably tell you this. This is the most saddest artifact in all of going to the Holy Lands, is going to Bethlehem. Bethlehem, again, is in Palestine area. And it's very sad. It means it's very, very poor, very decrepit. This is the church that we were able to go into. When you go into it, you have to go into this church. You have to go into this Catholic church. It's super gaudy. You go into a room, and then there's like this little bitty cubby hole that's to the right. When you go into that little cubby hole, there's this hole in the floor. This is where they say the manger was. And I'll be honest, like, The Catholic Church that took over most of the sites that are in the Holy Lands, they're hard to look at. It's like they made them look like this over time. Now, I'm not saying that that spot's a holy spot, but they would. They would say that that spot is where God would speak to them and God would do these things. I'm not saying that you can't believe that stuff, but I am saying that that's great. I think it's cool to know that's where it's at, but that has no symbolization of really what's going on. So you'll see that I think it's more fascinating to see how the Romans take care of the area, how Bethlehem was technically off the beaten path. Why would the world, would a king be born there? Well, it was because his dad was told to go there. But why? Because of a census, right? In the middle of nowhere, where no one could find him. The coolest part about Bethlehem is where the shepherds were. Because you go out where the shepherds were and you actually get to see where it's kind of like a little small hillside. And you can just imagine in this hillside where they had their sheep and they sat there with their people, and you can just imagine the angels showing up to them and going, today, go into the city and go see this baby. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. So it's really, really cool. It's a really cool thing to be able to think about that way. It's cool to be able to have that. Sorry, this is my last one. This is what Jerusalem would have looked like. This is where we're headed. This is what we'll talk about next time. Jerusalem would have looked like this when Jesus was born. This would have been the temple. This would have been Herod's palace. This would have been the upper city where the richer people live. This is where the poorer people were. The pools of Bethsaida. By the way, we know where those are now, and we can actually go see them now. Yeah, you can see all this stuff that's here. What's really cool, Garden of Gethsemane is over here. Yeah, right here. And you'll see all this stuff. In 70 AD, the Romans get tired of the Jews, and they burn the whole thing down. So what we even know today is still not what we know. What they're undiscovering right now is they're finding more about that pool of Bethsaida. They actually are discovering more of David's palace. They actually could say right now that they believe that they know where David was at when he was looking at Bathsheba. That's kind of cool. But these are the things that we actually can see and do. So, any questions on those? If you want to know more about non-biblical stuff, Confucius and Buddha was around 600 BC. Hindu was 1500 BC. And like I said, the Chinese Qing dynasty was 1766 BC. Here's how the world powers work. This will be important as we talk about next time. It went Egypt, then it was Judges, where it was the tribes. Then Judah came to rise for a short period of time when Solomon, do you remember the kings and queens that would come and learn underneath Solomon? That was why that was important. Then after that, it was the Assyrians. After the Assyrians, it was the Babylonians. Then after the Babylonians, it was the Persians. Then it was the Greek with Alexander the Great. Greek because he's Macedonian, so it's kind of a mixture. And then it was the Romans. And what it will be that destroys everything after this and all of the Roman Empire, all of this stuff right here, will be little bitty tribes all through this area. Will destroy almost every bit of this. And they'll just destroy it. Africans will come up here and knock all this stuff out. Here's what's amazing. We have not talked about one thing about Islam. Islam doesn't happen until 600 years after Christ is born. What's sad about it is that they steal all of the heritage from the Babylons, the Assyrians. They steal all this stuff and make it completely worthless because they did not believe in Muhammad. So they destroy their own heritage. Super sad. But this is where we come from. And I think it's a fascinating thing, and I think everyone should get to know more about this. If you want to come and look at this, I think it's great. You actually can see, again, at the top, you can see all of the lineage of Jesus that's in the Bible. You can see the lineages of all these different, every one of these little streams is a different country and a different state. That big pink thing in the middle, that's all the Roman Empire. You see how they took control of the whole entire world. And as you keep on going all the way to the end, you have about this much of America. Okay? 1776 till now. We landed on these shores in 1620, okay? What's funny is about most public schools is that we start teaching history around 1620 today. And I'm telling you, there's a whole lot more to learn than just that, okay? Any questions? If you have them, ask me later because I'm already over time. Let me pray for you and let me go. Let me pray. God, thank you for today. God, I thank you so much for your story. Your story is the history of this world. And God, I believe that without a doubt, you're in control of all these stories and all these things that have and haven't happened. And God, I pray, Lord, that you're making a story even with us. And God, we can be able to trust that and believe that. And God, I pray, Lord, that you would just continue to make the story for your glory. And God, no matter what happens in the future, we don't have to worry about tomorrow because we know you hold it. And God, we can trust that each and every day. And God, I thank you for everybody here listening. Thank you for the patience. And I hope they can digest a little bit. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you, guys. Have a great week.